So I think it's time to get started. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you. So today's MF CASR lunch speaker is Victor Ghica. And Victor is a professor of Antiquity and Early Christian Studies here at MF. And since 2019, Victor has been directing an ERC-funded research project called Deconstructing Early Christian Meta-Narratives, 4th Century Egyptian Christianity in the Light of Material Evidence, or DEChriM. Right. So today he's here with us to share some more information about the project, and also I think we'll hear some of the outcomes of the project. And I think most of you know how we do this, but there are also some new people. So Victor will talk for about 13 minutes, and then we have about 13 minutes also for question and answers and for discussion. And if you want to raise a question, you can either walk over to the microphone, or we can pass it to you here. Or if you're with us digitally, you can put your question in the chat function, and Greg will read it up for us. Please, Victor.
God dag. Also, tack för invitationen. I did a paper, very, very brief CASR talk. We were talking together about this about 5 years ago, in that limbo period before the application and the result. And I remember that even back then I came with a bunch of papers that flew around. So what I would like to do today, it's a very, very, very brief overview of what we've been doing on the first floor next to the kitchen where our offices are. So the long name of the, thank you for spelling out the long name of the project. I always have to check it. It was initially a 5 years project that was extended for various reasons to 6 years. Now we are in year 5. So some numbers, first of all, we've been throughout these last 4 and almost a half years, 14 scientific members covering areas such as archaeology, papyrology, Greek and Coptic, ceramic studies. We've been having 2 ceramicists, history of religions, obviously archaeological survey, as well as database, which has been a big thing in our work. Together with these 14 scientific members, of which nowadays in this moment based at MF were only 2, we have been working with 23 external collaborators, archaeologists, 8 of them topographers, 4 of them ceramicists, 4 other ceramicists other than the 2 in our team, an architect, a glass specialist, an archaeozoologist, an archaeobotanist, a 3D modeling specialist, an archivist, as well as an IT engineer who's been building our database from very far away. The project was organized like all ERC projects in work packages, right? So we have in my initial application 10 original work packages focusing on corpus of monuments, so 4th century dated monuments, Christian monuments in Egypt. And I'm going perhaps to talk quickly about dating, methods of dating and so on. Then a corpus of artifacts, another work package, organizing, isolating all artifacts dated to the 4th century that are Christian, that were found in Egypt. All those criteria had to be checked, that they're Christian, that they are dated to the 4th century, as well as the origin, the provenance. A catalog of 4th century pottery, an editions of new Greek and Coptic texts, a database, which is up and running, a study of Christian archaeology, which is run currently focused on the Harga Oasis as a PhD thesis by Rhiannon, a monographic study on the development of Christianity in the 4th century Egypt. This is a monograph, a final monograph, a book on which we are working, that we're putting up together. I'm going to get back to that. A conference that we're going to organize in October this year, likely within the walls of our house, as well as fieldwork. I added in 2019 an additional work package, which is the publication of a large survey carried out over 15 years by the French Institute of Oriental Archaeology, where I had worked for many years before coming here. An extensive survey over 15 years, as I said, of the oasis of Kharga, which is one of the oases of the Western Desert of Egypt. Now, we included that in our project for the simple reason that being an extremely extensive and very detailed archaeological survey, it allowed us to zoom in at very high resolution into the inner workings of these oases in the 4th century and implicitly to study the development of Christianity at the micro topographical sort of level, so in very fine granular detail. So what did we do? I'm going to divide the years into groups of 2 years. So the year 1 and 2 was a year of groundwork. That's when we started constructing our website as well as the databases. And I'm talking about the #1 database of our project that's called 4CARE, 4th century Christian archaeological record of Egypt. That lasted for 18 months, actually. We started populating as well as testing the database. The database has to be moduled and adapted to the needs. So you have to, at the same time, build it and populate it, which is what we've been doing for 2 years, basically. Identification and selection of artifacts classifiable as Christian. So this implies going through dozens, hundreds of catalogs, through thousands and thousands and thousands of publications, and selecting eventually the artifacts that are dated to the 4th century, checking the provenance, the dating, and so on. We have currently in our database about 1,700 and something artifacts. Those were Corona times, right? So we managed to run 5 fieldwork seasons, quite epic conditions very often, which were dedicated to data field acquisition. We ran 2 excavations on 2 different sites, several topographic surveys on 4 different sites in the oasis again, archaeological reconnaissance on about perhaps 50 sites, which resulted in the material that's associated with every single archaeological site that we find in the 4CARE database now, as well as a lot of photogrammetry on 10 or 15 sites, which resulted later in our 3D photogrammetric model. We did a lot of site descriptions for the database. We started our radiocarbon dating campaign because we have a solid budget dedicated exclusively to radiocarbon dating, which allows us to date as many archaeological sites as we can, as well as a number of objects. That's the year also when we incorporated this South Kharga Oasis survey into DEChriM. This is when we also created a second database, which is also hosted onto the servers of MF, and it's accessible through our webpage. And at the end of these 2 years, we opened the databases to the public. We made a big effort to be able to have something to offer. And at that time, we had around 1,300 artifacts already populated into the database. Now, this is the work of obviously everyone. It's not me. All the many people that I mentioned previously. Years 3 and 4, these were dedicated to the study of the material, as well as to cross-sectional studies based on raw data. This project is very much about raw data, about primary sources, about how to tackle primary sources independently from secondary sources, and eventually integrating the latter. So we wrapped up entering all the written artifacts in the database, except those that are being published by us. And these are 253 ostraka that we're editing now. Many of them are already finished. I'm going to talk about this. We ran 5 more fieldwork excavation seasons with 6 new excavations on, well, I should actually start showing some things. That's the screenshot of the first page of the 4CARE database at your fingertips. This is one of the archaeological sites excavated in December 2020. That's one hermitage of Allora, 4th century, mid-4th century foundation date in the Bahariya oasis in the Western Desert.
Awesome around.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This Oh, it is it is one of the early, I mean, it is one of the two earliest or three earliest monasteries known in the world, obviously, and preserved and securely dated. And the two others, we excavate them also. This is the site of Bhagawat, the Pompeii of the Western Desert, as it's called, a huge necropolis. This is one of the sites where we excavate Douche that's been excavated for 50 years, basically, by the French Institute of Archaeology, and we took over the direction. Well, I will I can explain a bit later. Yeah, we initiated also during the last two previous last years 6 or 7 thematic studies which we finalized as well. Examples of which are the dynamic between the Manichaean and Christian communities, which is one of the core axes of research of ours. We proposed, and we have an article about that, a new hypothesis regarding the origins of the Nag Hammadi collection, right? We ran a new computing, and we have new results for calculating the Christian demographics, the percentage of Christians out of the total population. We have a synthesis on the Christian community of Kisis, Dush, the big archaeological site that's the one photographed from my kite, that one exactly. On the origins of monasticism, another article finalized by Håkon and myself. We continued our campaign of 14C radiocarbon dating with perhaps 24 more calibrated ages of archaeological sites, but also of artifacts, and we managed to obtain samples from some collections in Italy, Florence, Milan, Rome, papyri, exactly, and some textiles from Berlin. These are the only places where we were successful in obtaining permits for sampling in view of radiocarbon dating. We finished the volume 6 of the Greek ostraka coming from Dush, that archaeological site, which already led to the publication of 5 volumes by other authors in the 90s and 2000s. So we finalized the 6th volume, which is a very chunky one that also allowed us to very precisely date the totality of these ostraka, which all come from a very precise period anyway. We also started the edition, which is going to become a volume in itself, of the 50 Coptic ostraka coming from the same site, Dush. We are nearing the end of this publication. And we initiated a vast study of the ceramic productions in circulation in 4th century Egypt. What's the point of studying ceramic when you look at the development of Christianity? So what's the point of this work package? Well, the thing is that archaeologists have been for a very long time at odds a bit with the ceramic of the 4th century, 5th century, and they, to put it very simply, basically incapable to truly recognize 4th century levels based on the ceramic insight, simply because that ceramic was not sufficiently well characterized and there were not sufficient fossil directors, so very specific types of pottery that would characterize the 4th century. And now we we're in a very advanced state of also finalizing this volume. Romain David is doing a brilliant job on that, and the volume is going to be finished this summer. We're coming now to the present, so years 5 and 6, we're now in year 5. We're now preparing for publication 5 books, the volume on 4th century ceramic, Romain David, volume of the edition of the Coptic ostraka from Dush and Ain Waqfa, which is done by Matthias Müller and myself, a volume on the excavation of the monastery, the 4th to 6th century monastery of Janub Qasr al-Ajuz, which I've been circulating an image of, that we excavated for several years, and the last time in 2000. In 2020, yeah, in 2020. We are preparing now. We have actually ready the volume of the South Kharga Oasis survey. We just need one more contribution to send it to the editor. Well, these in addition to the 2 volumes that we already sent to the editors. So the 6th volume of the Dusho Straka, as well as a volume by myself and Gérard Roquet on the almost 300 Coptic graffiti on the walls of the chapels of the necropolis of Bhagavat. Now, in addition to these volumes, we're working on a final synthesis of DEChriM, so this chunky final volume, which is going to contain all our core studies, as well as actually the papers resulting from the project's conference, which is going to take place in October. It's going to be called Christians and Christianities in 4th Century Egypt. And the papers of this conference are going to be published together with our key articles in one single book, perhaps in 2 volumes, we're going to see. We have 2 more excavation seasons scheduled. We were actually meant to be in Egypt in November and excavate. We didn't get the permits. We're still waiting. These are going to happen very likely this year. And 1 more survey in the Eastern Desert. Now, what did all this lead to? Very, very briefly, so we now hold a solid corpus of the material remains of 4th century Christianity in Egypt. And this is obviously the only complete such record in the field, in the area of early Christian studies. We have a more precise view about Christian demographics, simply how many people were Christian actually during the 4th century, and how this percentage evolved during time between the beginning of the century, right? So this 4th century, what is it? What we're talking about? So the main landmark is, I mean, in the minds of all of us, 313, the so-called Edict of Milan, which was not an edict, was not issued in Milan, was not issued by Constantine. But anyway, it liberates in some way the Christian practice. And that's one landmark. And towards the end of the century, we have a situation where Christianity is overwhelmingly present in basically all the provinces of the Roman Empire. So we're looking at meteoric ascension, right? Evolution of a religion that conquers basically everything available. And we are trying to look at the pace of that evolution, of that Christianization process, as well as the factors, who instigated it, who Christianized, how was this religion transmitted. We're proposing a new understanding of the emergence of Christian monasticism, and we have an article already finished about this. Also of the interplay between Christians and Manichaeans in the first 150 years of Mani's church, and we try to see how one influenced the other and vice versa. A new perspective on the invention of the Coptic alphabet, and we're working currently on this. The creation of a Coptic literary language, and that of a pan-Egyptian Christian lingua franca, the Sahidic dialect, which is the main dialect of the Coptic language, which is an artificial product. We have also formulated a new hypothesis in relation to the origins, as I mentioned earlier, of the Nag Hammadi library. We also propose a draft of chronology for the Christianization of the inner Egypt, of the Korah, so outside of Alexandria, all Egypt that's not Alexandria, based on papyrological sources. It is a tiered process, right? Despite what the Alexandrian sources want us to believe, it is a set of processes, let's put it that way. We could also dismantle the received view about the Roman frontier in the Western Desert, in the sense that I personally believe that there is no reason to, draw a line in the desert and say that's the frontier. We are looking at something very different in reality, a more complex system. We have we have the excavations of 2 very well dated 4th century monasteries, of one Christianized village, Shamsuddin, of which you have a 3D architectural reconstruction here. In terms of heritage, we have produced a sort of a proper repository of photogrammetric models. We have around 47 3D photogrammetric models that we produced. We created a pipeline for the web visualization of these models, as we made tests also with VR modeling. And the results, for example, is here. So you have here an example of 3D architectural reconstruction merged into the real photogrammetric model of a site. And in Ghica, which is this oasis far away from 10 hours drive by car if you don't get a fine from Cairo in the heart of the desert, which allowed us, where we concentrated our forces and where we are exclusively excavating right now, it allowed us to, I mean, it provided us with a sort of keyhole, and it allowed us to zoom in, as I said, to this sort of high definition views on the realities of 4th century Christian communities. And this peephole has been a lifesaver for us. We invested the Ghica oasis, and we work on a variety of archaeological sites, and we have a large concession. And it allowed us to look into this humble Christianity that, you know, exploded in the 4th century and thrived on the very edge of the Roman Empire, on the limes, literally on the frontier of the Roman Empire. Well, thank you very much. I hope that was a bit clarifying.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.